Dr. Von, thank you for being here today. I'm going to ask some clarifying questions regarding your work. Now, before I do that, I just want to say that I recognize that you're a very well-accomplished physician, and none of my questioning is intended to undermine your qualifications or your credibility. All I'm trying to do is help the court determine if your qualifications are the right fit for this case, and if your analysis can help the jury arrive at a just conclusion. So starting with your qualifications, I didn't see on your resume any specialized forensic training.
No, as I mentioned, I am not forensically trained.
Okay, and so you're not a forensic psychologist. Do you diagnose or treat mental illness as part of your practice?
I work with a lot of patients that have these diagnoses, yes.
But do you do those diagnoses yourself or prescribe medication?
I do prescribe medication. And
I'm sorry, please continue.
No.
For mental illnesses, specifically?
If they get a diagnosis of a mental illness like dementia, yes, I would be prescribing medication.
Okay. Would you say that the practice of diagnosing and prescribing medication is a precise science?
Not always. The medication and the reaction to a person would be based on individual case by case, as medicine typically affects people differently.
So it might take a couple visits to precisely calibrate the correct amount of medication.
That's right.
Does that apply more in neurological cases or in the case of neurological illness?
It could. I wouldn't say it happens more in one case or another.
Okay. I want to talk to you about Alex Suburban's Ativan prescription. You mentioned in your report that Ativan is used to treat anxiety, but if used improperly, it could cause confusion.
If used improperly, yes.
And as you just mentioned, it takes some work to calibrate what the right dosage would be of any other medication.
Yes, sometimes on the first go it might be right, sometimes it might take 2 or 3 tries, yes.
And that analysis might depend on the severity of the patient's anxiety.
Yes.
So the more anxious someone is, the more Ativan they need?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
That could be possible, surely, but again, it would depend on the person. Maybe a smaller dose is much stronger on someone than it would be on another.
But it's certainly a factor in that analysis.
Sure.
Did you interview Dr. McCollum?
No, I did not. I reviewed their medical evaluation.
Okay. You didn't interview the individual who diagnosed Mr. Suburban's anxiety?
No, I did not.
You didn't interview the individual who prescribed his Ativan?
No.
I'm trying to figure out from the record, it seems like you didn't investigate the degree or severity or extent of Mr. Suburban's anxiety at all.
No, I did not.
So you have no idea if his Ativan dosage was correct?
No, I would have had to meet with Mr. Suburban personally, and he is unfortunately passed.
So you don't know if he was taking too much Ativan?
I'm sorry?
You don't know if he was taking too much Ativan?
No, but based on the medication regimen that I reviewed, the dosage was fairly appropriate for an average person with anxiety.
But without knowing the degree of anxiety that Mr. Suburban had, you can't be sure?
I mean, I would have to speak to Mr. Suburban himself, yes.
Let's discuss confusion specifically, since taking an improper dosage of Ativan can cause confusion. You mentioned 2 isolated instances when Alex Suburban manifested signs of confusion.
That's right.
And who did you hear about these instances from?
I had reviewed statements made by those closest to Mr. Suburban, and that's where I got that information.
Okay, and it's true that Carson Labor didn't report to you any other instances of confusion?
No.
Who did you get most of the testimony regarding Alex Suburban's day-to-day conduct?
Who did I get that
From
from?
whom did you get it? Yes.
Primarily from Carson Labors. He was the only one with day-to-day contact with the deceased.
Right, okay. So you said there are only 2 reported cases, or 2 reported instances of confusion. And then you also say that there aren't any signs that Alex Suburban manifested confusion when he was preparing his holographic board. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you reviewed the holographic board?
Yes, I did.
Could you speak to the accuracy of it? With respect to knowledge of his property, with respect to whether he was making a will, with respect to knowledge of his natural objects?
Like whether he was accurate in what he was saying.
Let me rephrase. Did Alex Suburban know he was making a will?
Yes.
Did he indicate knowledge of his property?
Yes.
Your Honor, permission to approach. You recognize this as the polygraph approval of Alex Hubbard, yes?
Yes.
Could you read paragraph 1 for me?
Sure. I am a lifelong resident of Sycamore, Gambrel. My legal address is 1130 Clifton Road, Sycamore, Gambrel, 11122.
Thank you. Are you aware that that's not his physical address?
Yes.
So how do you explain, well, sorry, let me rephrase. You just said that knowledge of property is a required element of testamentary capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll move on.
Counsel, did you want to admit that?
Oh, yes, please, and thank you, Your Honor. May I admit Exhibit 1 into evidence?
Any objection?
Without objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. You said that you also reviewed some of Alex Hubbard's work, or that at the very least you're aware that he entered into a business agreement towards the end of his life.
Yes.
Did you actually review that contract?
No.
Okay. If you had, you would have seen that there are several errors on the document. Do errors on a business document indicate limited or diminishing mental capacity for someone as experienced as Alex Hubbard?
Was Alex Hubbard the person who wrote that document?
He did approve it, but fair question. I'll move on. Did you talk to any of Alex Hubbard's business associates?
No, I did not.
Anyone who worked with him?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Your Honor, this goes to Alex Hubbard's mental capacity with respect to, let me rephrase. Dr. Von Winkler's report cites Alex Hubbard conducting business as evidence of his mental capacity, and so I want to get to whether or not that conclusion was actually substantiated by the evidence.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you. So you're not, okay.
No.
Dr. Von Winkler, I'm trying to understand from your report, you didn't talk to anyone besides Carson Labor? Is that correct?
I didn't personally talk to anyone. I reviewed all of the statements that were given by people who are associated with Mr. Summers.
You reviewed the statements. So
Yes.
the only testimony on which you're basing your report comes from someone who stands to gain $24 million based on your analysis?
No, like I said, I reviewed all of the statements of those associated with Mr. Summers, which includes, yes, Carson Labors, but also includes Alex, Sam, Blake.
But the only person you interviewed was Carson Labor.
I believe I only reviewed their statement.
Oh, so you never even spoke to Carson Labor?
No.
So the person who spent almost every day with Alex Hubbard, you didn't actually directly talk to them?
No, I reviewed their statement, which provided.
Although earlier in your testimony, you did say that the 2 reports of confusion were confirmed by Carson Labor. That was from his written statement?
That's right.
Okay, understood. You knew that Dr. McMullen was Alex Hubbard's physician,
That he had evaluated Summers, yes.
so you could have talked to him.
I guess so.
You could have spoken to Alex Hubbard's business associates.
I would have found them, yeah.
You could have spoken to Sycamore County Hospice, who actually did mental evaluation of Alex Hubbard when he was alive,
Sure.
in his final month in September.
Sure.
Doctor, I'm not an expert, but it seems like if you want to get an accurate assessment of testamentary capacity post-mortem, you'd want to talk to as many of the decedent's associates as possible. Is that correct?
I mean, I had all of the information at hand that would allow me to make a conclusion, so I did not feel the need to go above and beyond that.
Earlier you mentioned, though, that you didn't even talk to the person who prescribed Alex's Ativan, or the person who diagnosed him with anxiety.
Yes.
And because of that, you can't tell if he was given the right dosing of that. Correct?
That's not what I said. I said because I haven't spoken to Mr. Summers, I don't know if that dosage was correct for him. Ultimately, the other physicians wouldn't know that as well.
But you also said that it could take multiple visits to calibrate the right amount of dosage
It
of any
could,
medication.
yes.
And that someone's anxiety, or the degree to which they manifest anxiety, is a factor in that analysis.
Sure.
And yet you didn't meet the person who prescribed Alex's Ativan, or the person diagnosed with anxiety.
Like I said already, no.
So I'll reiterate the question. Isn't it the case that if you want to get the most accurate assessment of someone's testamentary capacity post-mortem, you should talk to as many of their prior physicians, business associates, other associates as possible.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Fair enough. Doctor, did you want to make an accurate assessment in this case?
Of course.
And so why didn't you talk to these individuals?
They weren't accessible to me.
You didn't know that you could reach Dr. McMullen?
No, they were not accessible to me.
You tried?
They weren't accessible to me.
Your Honor, I'll use the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Redirect?
All right,
No, Your
So
Honor.
does the excuse?
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.